Hello. So this is going to be more of an informational video. So I was watching the video that I had just posted in my post/community page tab on the far right of my page, and it was talking about when India was African, and I had known about the Hyksos because people were naming them Hyksos from a certain perspective. And I was reading this PDF from a book. Uh, I was reading a PDF from a book that was talking about the Aryans. Well, when I was reading the comments of this video, what ended up happening is, hey, what ended up happening was one of the commenters said something about Siberians, and I was like, oh shit, I forgot about that region, like Russian stuff. But so then I looked at a map and I started to notice all this land up there in Siberia and Russia. Those people are a subspecies of humans, just like Africans or other species of humans in indigenous areas that linked off and broke apart and then came back together. And so the reason I wanted to point that out is they were saying through information technology and research that the Siberians had come down, and Syrians, because they were constantly mixing through history. And what they had did was they had mixed back into the Indus Valley. Well, about the time they had mixed back into the Indus Valley, what ends up happening is you would have an introduction to a people also coming into Africa, which it wasn't called Africa at first either. And in this video, you'll hear me, and from now on, probably you'll hear me say Kemet a lot, because unknowing to me, I thought Kemet was a religion, but it's actually the name of the place. They called it Black Land because the soil was the same color as the people. It was fertile and rich. And so I'm learning different links of how people from out of Kemet and Kush and these different lands and areas were creating civilization and structures and infrastructure, and different kings were making the land better versus being greedy and destroying the people. And you know, each person has their own legacy. Different people do different things. But what I'm essentially trying to tell you all is that basically a lot of people from Kemet in Africa, who they are labeling as evil and bad, were actually creators of civilization and society. And so the reason why this is interesting is because it ties everything together. A lot of times from an English perspective, or an American, I guess, perspective, when I look at these websites, they keep trying to say that the Aryans, or they keep trying to say that the Aryans are totally separate than the Hyksos. And I don't think, honestly, I think honestly what's happening is just like how we're mixing today, and you have light-skinned people and people that are mixing different factions of humanity, just even in choice, because you know you love who you love. Well, what I'm noticing is I think that's essentially what happened. You would have these people who were lighter skinned, who were Asian, because I'm gonna make a statement, like you guys will say Caucasian. Well, do you know that Asian is just Cauc Africa? I'm telling you it is. I've been researching history, and there are different species of humans. And what happened was throughout time, these different humans came back together and started mixing together, and until we have different subspecies of humans. And so, no, I'm not saying we have different abilities and different this and that, but we kind of do in terms of physical. I don't know about so much mental yet. That seems to be environmental and how people are raised and whatnot. But in terms of physical attributes, there are people that have different attributes than others, and that's because we are different species of humans, and I didn't even realize it until I did more research. Like they'll say, you'll hear people say Neanderthal a lot, but actually, in terms of Neanderthal, you would have a whole bunch of different people, even over in Americas. You would have different forms of Asians that went up super far north because they were calling people Denisovans. You can look these words up. Denisovans are basically was a species of humans from, and a lot of different Asians have that type of DNA. Well, then you would also have the Neanderthal, and a lot of Anglo-Saxons and Siberians and different Aryans have that type of DNA. And essentially that's just different humans, or whatever we were, humanoids, humanids, going into different parts of the planet and then evolving until we have different traits and different, you know, things that our species are able to do. But even still, you look at animals, different species of animals, like you have different cats, big cats, Wolves, dogs. Stop it, Aphrodite. Bad Mrs. Kitty. And just like how with that you have species of humans now. So I mean, we could still say, you know, humans are apes. Cool, we have a lot of similarities, but in actuality humans are humans now, and they might be a distant cousin, and we might have evolved from different aspects of being an ape, but now we're different. And I just want to say something real quick. You people with this 100 people that are doing like the 100 humans versus gorilla, like, first of all, I want to teach you guys something about power scaling and what times strength means. So like if you play a video game and you play a scaled video game, oh, I fucking hate scaled video games. I'm sorry for my language. When you play a scaled video game, a lot of times you have a power level. And so like, let's say I have a power level of, let's say Diablo Immortal. I have a power level of 46,850. Now, you guys will hear like this stuff and they'll be like, gorillas are 10 times stronger than men, so 20 men can defeat it. That's not how that's not how times and multiples of strength work. So I'm gonna explain something real quick. If I were to fight somebody at the power level of 46,800 blah blah blah, then if they are 49,000, even though they're only 3,000 higher, they're going to fucking obliterate me. If I'm fighting somebody with a power level of 43,000, I'm going to fucking obliterate them. When you guys hear times 10 strength of humans, that doesn't mean 11 humans can defeat a gorilla. That means if I can lift 100 pounds, that means a gorilla can lift 1,000 pounds. Okay, so that means if 10 men charge at a gorilla, when it swipes at them, because you guys are like, charge from here and there, first of all, they're extremely fucking fast. Go watch videos of gorillas fighting and watching them do and all that jumping and agility. They hold themselves in trees and shit. Like, I don't think you guys understand, we walk on our legs. They can walk on their hands, dude, at their weight. And so what I'm essentially telling y'all is, what's going to happen, like, only so many men can grab at a limb at a time. And you guys will try to, like, grab limbs and do whatever, and you're going to get your ribs broke, your face and neck's broke. You're going to just get really hurt really badly. And I hear some people saying, the gorilla's going to get tired. Oh, my God. Like, I don't know. So this is just a warning. Don't play around with nature and wild animals. They're wild for a reason. We don't have the physical structure to fight a lot of these wild big animals without the tools we possess. You want to argue humans have weapons versus a gorilla, something, fine. We're going to defeat it. But just with your bare hands, we're not built for that kind of stuff anymore. That's like, what you're doing is like taking a wild Siberian tiger, or the biggest house cat tiger type thing, cats, sorry. And then you're taking like a house lion that has its nails clipped and its teeth took out for human purposes, which is cool, but whatever. And then you're like, 100 of those lions could beat that Siberian tiger. No, they can't. They've been disarmed, and they're. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's not the same, dude. Our punches aren't. These human punches, they're like, if you get the strongest humans to punch your punches are not gonna hurt a gorilla. I've seen them fight, and with their strength, they be. Dude, y'all are silly, man. So I don't know. I guess that's just like a funny thing people are doing online. You guys can get on here and argue your logic. Oh, but we're gonna blah, blah, blah. Whatever. I see y'all cry after 2 hours of work. I don't. They live in the wilderness, dude. They don't even eat meat, and yet their teeth would tear your limbs off. I'm just telling y'all how it works. But back to the whatever I was even talking about. I'm perplexed that argument even exists. I think it's really the ego sometimes send people off, and it makes them do silly things. Oh, back with the African history, and it wasn't even called Africa either. I gotta look up what the name for it was, but that's where a lot of these words and sciences stem from, chemistry, and they talking about we were African voodoo, blah blah blah. That's all bullshit. What they did was, over the course of like 4,000 or 5,000 years, it destroyed civilization at different points with conquering war. Even with the pharaohs in the Bible, I'm telling you, the Hyksos, who they see, and the point of, I think, why they keep trying to not associate the Hyksos with the Aryans is because if they do that, and the Siberians, what'll happen is, it'll take away from the truth of them being Semitic. And so they have to associate them with being Semitic somehow. So I can argue and agree that, yeah, maybe they were mixing into Canaanite culture, because even the AI overview will say they adopted their chariot war style and all their tools and war and da-da-da-da. But then it'll be like, they didn't mix. What? That sounds dumb, dude. That's like saying the Kemet and Greeks didn't mix. The Grecians loved the Kemet. They talked about it constantly. And so the portion of like Germanic peoples that a lot of people, because even when dealing with archaeology, apparently some German archaeologists came down and was like, we're going to switch the time frames of the pharaohs and this and that and it's like, I'm telling y'all in current history who's trying to play in certain things, and I don't know why. Maybe it's for supreme power or logic. They're adopting old ways from men who used to create houses of bondage. And so even if you want to look at this, if you're going to say you were from the Levant or Canaan and you were a part of those people are the ones that raided the garden, raided Africa, created pharaohs. It's in written history, not the biblical stuff, but even in the Bible it mimics what this written history says. Because I was talking to somebody, and if you pay attention, the people from the Indus Valley, or Brahma, right, where that stuff was created, which was a black guy, came and invaded after the Aryans invaded them first. And you had the Siberian invasions from, and even look at Nimrod. It's Mean, Narmer's Rod, and Cain, right? Cain the farmer, Nim's Rod. And so I'm just telling people what they're doing is they're taking African history and Kemet and Kush history, Mehet and all those areas, and the Congo. It wasn't called the Congo, it was something else too. But there actually wasn't a name for a lot of that land. It was just when I looked at the ancient map. But yeah, they raided the place that was being civilized, and then our people branched out throughout time and started civilizing the rest of civilization. But then I'll talk about how we use jungle people and stuff. That's silly. A lot of those, the European, like actual Anglo-Saxon people that actually was coming down in the Dark Ages, the 1500s, 1400s, 1300s, after the barbarians and Vikings defeated the popes and the Romans and Byzantine and the Ottomans too. What they did was they tried to go into Africa and couldn't even survive in that land or area, and they was getting burnt up. And then they tried to greet and meet with people, show them certain luxuries, and then buy their way in. It's in written history. They're the ones that wrote this. This isn't African or race bait or whatever you guys want to call it. And so what I'm trying to teach you guys is you guys have been baffled and buffooned. We actually are the creators and the gods. And a lot of our stories and lores that people, like the Greek gods and the Roman gods and even the Persian gods, they're from our people and our lore. The first god was a tomb in Kemet. That's wild, right? And in 1,000 years, he was done away with. Then you had Muad and all these other gods, a moon, a man, a tomb, a ten, all from the original creator father or whatever. It's interesting what, we know. And then when it comes to servants and slavery and stuff, we found out it was the Aryans and the Hyksos, who they'll say have nothing to do with each other, but how are they so light-skinned? They had already intermingled. And Babylon probably was light-skinned and mixed, and they was creating the red man. That's true in history. That's wild. And so a lot of times people say the Bible isn't true. Yeah, like from a magical fairy tale standpoint, what they're doing, but a lot of these words have meaning and they're from actual history. It's just not the 100% truth. And like how it's written, certain people are stealing blessings and putting blindfolds amongst people's eyes. They really are. So, it's an interesting algorithm when you open up and actually do a lot of research and see how a lot of this intermingles and comes together, because you even learn the words and the truth within each civilization. And I'm beginning to learn that we are the creators. We teach other people throughout history. We have, and people talking about this current science and steel and concrete roads and old, way old. And then even a lot of these metals are coming from people who have had the technology before them. How is they doing this stuff if they were still dancing around with spears and stuff? So just trying to teach y'all, the more you guys lie to yourselves and not tell the truth and not open up and just say I am sorry and learn new, the more you'll be bound in these silly lies and lures and be caught in these cages of religious torment. Because none of it is really real based on what I'm learning. It's just people's lies to keep people bound in cages. So wake up and be new and enjoy your life. And bring yourself programming shit. Like I told y'all, write a poem, write a story, write a book, even if it sounds like vain sayings, but it's all positive and loving, and put those loving words back in who I am in the temple, because they have taken out for time and time again. And now those kings and idols will be destroyed, and who I am will be brought back to the heart and the temple again. And behold. Okay, I was going to turn this into a just a bunch of pictures after the video, but I feel like this is really important, and I want to give you guys archaeological and cultural and scientific proof of what I'm talking about with these names and these kings and these stories. And so if you look here, you would have Cush, Punt, Kemet, Tehenu. I may be saying some of these names wrong. Medjay, and you see like, and where the Congo is, a lot of that is empty, and then you have Twa, right? So, and then you look at the bottom, I've talked about those people, the Sam Bushmen, how they have been established for over 200,000 years and are still a cultural people, right? So then you hear about Adam and stuff and things like that. That was the first Kemetic god, and that was around 4000 BC. If you look at how this story has taken place based on what they have done in a real lineage of things, the year 2000 AD is literally the 6th day. I hate becoming biblical with this. I'm sorry. How should I say this? The 2000 AD is day 6, and it's leading to the final end of the biblical lore of 3000 AD, day 7 of rest. So then I started to think about it, even based on this little biblical lore. This is the last 1,000 years to do anything, sort of speak. And so it ties into how the resurrection of consciousness and people learning and living in the heart and learning who they are and becoming people again, not program robots and NPCs for kings and all this other bullcrap. But even more interesting, this God had 2 children. Who else had 2 children at the beginning? So like, I just want to get you guys to understand how a lot of this stuff. And so even when I looked at more Caucasian propaganda, I typed in, when did the Siberians invade the Indus Valley? Because if you look at a world map, if you look up at Russia, Siberia, Germany, Sweden, all those lands, you would even have 2 subsections where you have people that are Germanic, Anglo-Saxon, and then you go further, Britain and Irish, and then you would have more Aryan people or Assyrian, right? How are all these words so similar? And then you would have these people who are more actually Asiatic in their appearance. If you look at a picture of Trump and then you look at a picture of Putin, Trump looks more Asian. I'm sorry, scratch that. Putin looks more Asian. But if you look at a picture of Trump, he looks more like his golden hair could be seen as Anglo-Saxons mixing with the Irish, the Swede, different subsections of those types of humans. And so I'm telling you all how evolution works. And so what essentially happens is you would have these Siberians or Aryans first come down, raid the Indus Valley, Babylon, and the Levant, to where eventually you have a Semitic people. I've said this in another video of Bell Claim. I believe Semitic is more like when you have different species of humans come together and you create a subspecies of humans. So if these Siberians, who had changed in stature and lifestyle and culture over the course of thousands of years, came and met African people, then you would have a more Asiatic people or a Cauc African people. But if you look at their information, no, there is no evidence to suggest the Hyksos-Aryans mixed. That makes no sense. But they mixed as a culture and adopted all their military styles. And then you go even further, they wouldn't have had chariots in Siberia. I'm telling you all what's happening. They're talking about the wheel was created in different locations and stuff. But I don't. What you're seeing is propaganda. Look, these people, the Semitic people are mixed with the Aryans. The Aryans never invaded. That's whitewashing. Based on the color of their skin, they're trying to make a culture seem nonviolent, seem like it just mixed in and mingled in. But then you go further, they'll blame the Semitic people for the invasion of Kemet. So look, here you have even more proof. Who is Means Narmer? A man that lived around 3000 BC-ish, right? While there is no definitive proof of a full-scale military invasion of Canaan by Narmer, It's highly probable that he engaged in military campaigns to expand Kemet influence and to trade into the region. This man built up the Levant. You go too far in history, they'll say, oh, Mesopotamia goes back 3000 BC. But how is Africa going back to 15,000 BC? You go to the Indus Valley and look at some of these structures that they built, beautiful stone carvings. How did they learn how to carve stones to make roads? How did they learn how to make bricks and different stuff like this? So then you will look even further. Who is Nimrod? What is Canaan? It means Narmer spreading his influence until you have major Nephilim born. Nimrod, Canaan. Look at the names. So then this man was ancient. He was seen as like a father of civilizations in terms of new cultural. And if you look at the language of Giaz from Kush, because I'm tired of calling it Ethiopia and these other places, and Punt and all these other places, it's about 6,000 years old from its introduction. And a lot of these hieroglyphics that they try to basically translate, a lot of these people don't really know what they're talking about, but they have introduced a lot of language that is accurate and crazy to me because I don't know how humans are so intelligent while other humans do buffoonery. So the Indus Valley, right, okay, so watch this. The down here where I put LOL, the Indo-Aryans, a group of Indo-European people, migrated into the Indian subcontinent, primarily into the Indus Valley region during the 2nd millennium BC. So like I said, the 1900s later, remember you would have the Hyksos, and about the year 2000, these people came down peacefully. But I thought Mesopotamia was 3000 BC. Listen to what I'm telling you all. There was no Caucasians there at first or light-skinned people. It was a darker-skinned people. They came down and invaded. Then you have the Hyksos invasion. They'll say they invaded around 1500 BC. But I thought Moses was already here in 1500 BC and taking care of everything. The committed government to retreat to Thebes. Right? Okay. But the initial settlement down here, it says the Hyksos of Western Asian people had already settled in the Nile Delta around 1800 BC. Right? But then you look here, the Hyksos were believed to have entered Kemet around 1900 BC, though their exact date of arrival and nature of their initial presence is still a debate. And then down here even further, Missouri EDU, the Hyksos were a cultural group from Western Asia established a foothold in the Delta region in Lower Egypt around the 1900s. And so when I talk about researching and stuff, this is what I mean. If I would have just went off this, right? Or if I just go off this, I'd be totally lost. But if you do further research and keep learning, you'll find out what happens and why these people are so light-skinned. And then they'll say, oh, the Caucasians created everything. That's race bait. That's bullshit. It's the ultimate bullshit. Because lo and behold, if you I was finna look up a picture of something, but I lost my train of thought because I'm just being flabbergasted at history. You know what I mean? There's a video that I just watched that I was telling you guys about. This one right here. This one, African History Fountain. With the Forgotten Chapter when India was African, yo, they spitting straight facts. Like, oh my goodness. And I keep telling people, if you want to know like the truth about a lot of this church history, 33 church history to present. This video, they've got a bunch of them. It's like 2 hours long. It talks about basically what the Catholic Empire did and what they did to expand their influence from Rome, from the death of this man, who they idoled and turned into a god. A lot of different people mixed into Israel and Jerusalem, but they have this man's bone. And then when they talk about it in their news articles, 2 crucified men, him and Jesus. If y'all don't quit playing with me, that translates to John. And I'm gonna show you right now it does, because I'm tired of people playing with simple logic. Does the name Yehohanan mean John? Same exact name. Yes, the name is a Hebrew name that translates to John. What is Hebrew? They'll say this man, watch this. did William Tyndale translate the Bible into English? From Hebrew and Greek into English. So how did he, so if he did this in the 1500s and was killed because of it, who is this? Yiddish man who translated Hebrew. What is this? Oh, look at these Yiddish name and Germanic name and Asiatic and Caucasian names they're putting up here. But then who is this? This man prophecy translated and all types of stuff. And as a part of the land. William Tyndale, this man. You know where the Bible comes from? Him. The Gospel of Saints John. If it wasn't for him, you wouldn't know about Yahweh or Jehovah. That's why they killed him. He put those names back in that book. This man is who created y'all Bible. Because before that, did the popes allow people to have Latin? Because they weren't Bibles, they were Latin manuscripts. Yes, the church has allowed individuals. Man, in the Middle Ages. Here we go. They're lying. It's illegal to own a Bible in the Roman Empire. Oh my goodness. While early, so when was owning a Bible illegal in Byzantine Empire? While there were periods in the Byzantine Empire when possession or translation of the Bible was restricted. Like, because when I say propaganda, they lie so much. The whole point of the Middle Ages is they were crucifying and murdering and killing anybody teaching opposite to their teachings. So I just get tired of the bullshit. You really got to research because they will lie to you through their teeth. So that's why I talk about this man, William Tyndale, a lot. This dude was a genius. He wasn't some magical in a wilderness. This man was learned. I honestly think the revelation was Yehohanan or the word talking to him or the spirit or something before his execution. And I think the actual man, John, Yehohanan, the crucified man, is the one who they beheaded from the people and turned into a man god and put him in the grave. So I'm just telling y'all the true nature of things. These might be the two witnesses, Yehohanan and William Tyndale, or Moses and William Tyndale. Because look, even further, who is Amos? 1500s, Thebes, Egypt, the land they claimed was finally free from the Hyksos. 16th century BC. Who's this? The first pharaoh. Well, was Amos the first pharaoh. Oops. See Pharisee. Here we go. Pharaoh. The African man, you saw a statue. Well, he wasn't the very first one. I'll make you a god to them. He freed people from the Hyksos invasion. And then the pharaohs after him brought back tyranny. So, who was Amos' wife? Who was Amos' wife? And I'll show you where they get the story of Joshua next. Nefertiti in Africa. She's the same color as Brahma. So then this is where they get Joshua from. The 1300s Levant, Akhenaten. And it's sad actually because Akhenaten's son betrayed him and brought back those old bad gods, and he actually died. It's a whole story to it. This is where Joshua comes from. They talking about, is he Moses? There's a literal man named Amos, and they still looking for Moses. Anyways, and it comes from Amun, right? Atum was the first individual in history, came to power as pharaoh, 1350s for about 17 years, and he reformed everything, the Levant and all that. Akhenaten invade Levant. Hold on. Invade Canaan. And he invaded and took over this stuff. It seems like they're only going to show statues. Akhenaten army invade Canaan. So this dude took over. He, like how they said Joshua took the Levant, he took over the Levant. You can read about it. He took over all this stuff. And it's in written history. They just changed the names and lie about stuff. The King David and Solomon, look into the instruction of not a Menahat, I'm sorry. I'm in a mope. Oh shit. Yeah, instruction of a Menamope. There we go. This was a Menamope, who I like to call like Solomon, same time period. And then you would have Sunesis, his father, who wrote them. Oops. And this was that Greek man who claimed to be and the interesting thing, he was buried in silver, I think, and somebody before him gold. It even goes with the prophecy of the gold. And by the time, what's his name? The king from Babylon, they were being buried in bronze tubs. I'm telling you, I got videos talking about all this. They basically took a whole bunch of history, created a book, and lied about a lot of it. And even this man, this is who I call the real Elijah. Because he brought an order Mazda, and if you look in the Bible, they got Ezra, which is the end of his name, and Zara, right? The chosen one from Zara and Perez or whatever, Zarathustra. Or if you look at an Ezra, right, you change Ezra around, that's Zerah. And then a book of Esther or something like that, or I don't even know. But it all comes together. I did the research. They're taking a bunch of African and Asiatic history and now creating a blonde this. Jesus Christ, which was them mocking Yehohanan, right? Because they took the beginning of his name, Ye in Hebrew, right? Who William Tyndale was the one that translated this. It's not directly translatable, variations of Jesus, which it came from, it is. I just seen it the other day. Okay. What does ye translate to in Hebrew? You gotta do your research to try to throw you off. It changes every day. So it's the beginning name of saying graciousness or I'm gracious, and it was God's name. That's where they get Jehovah from, but sus in Latin. And they were mocking this man when they crucified him. And basically what you're saying is I'm a gracious pig. I'm telling you all. And so crucifixion of Yehohanan. They tied his arms to the cross and nailed his ankles into the cross, and then stabbed him in the loins. And so this basically was John the Baptist preaching against their buffoonery. He wouldn't bow to a Roman or a Greek, whoever, Caesar, and they killed him. When this happened, then another Caesar named Vespasian, this man was led to Jerusalem by this man. I will call him Josephus. When their military found him, he led Titus and Vespasian, these men, to Jerusalem. They found out Yehohanan was killed, and they tore that motherfucker up. This is the real story. And then they started worshiping him and looking for him because, watch this. Yehohanan ben Zakkai prophecy to Vespasian. He told a whole bunch of people that Vespasian was about to be the new emperor, and he prophesied it, and it came true. So when Vespasian went to go meet this man, they talking about he granted them a request. Nah, son. The truth is known now. It all ties together. They talking about Judas is the betrayer, but Judas is Judah minus the S and H. Peter, who I will call Josephus, was the first pope. He taught them all about Judean culture and everything. I'm telling y'all what's going on. I don't like Catholicism at all. or a lot of these mainstream religions, because it's paganism.